All right, welcome everybody to our December 1st, 2023 edition of This Week in Crypto. I'm your host, Brian. We're going to be talking all about the crypto markets now that we are officially in our final month of the year. Congrats for making it this far. I know it's been a rocky year, but it has been certainly more up than down, assuming you have been in the markets, longing the markets, that is, throughout 2023. It's compared to 2022, a much better story that, at least for now, knock on wood, it looks like we're going to end with. But there's still a lot of decisions to be made and a lot of volatility to wade through here. And the big story that will be reported on today on our channel as well as other channels is about Jerome Powell's decision, the head of the Fed here in the US, and the FOMC's decision as to whether to raise interest rates or not. And that discussion is going on as we speak. As some of you may know, if you have some crossover in the equities trading sphere, the S&P 500 has just had its best performing month in over 70 years. Believe it or not, there was a huge rise in stock values. And that may sound good on the surface, but what it does is it raises the likelihood of Jerome Powell and the Fed deciding to temper things a bit because they don't want things to go up too fast. And, we're still post COVID reaction. We wouldn't say we're post COVID-19 because, of course, the pandemic is still existing. But the markets, ever since early 2020, when that news hit the mainstream, became very irrational. And as you remember, in March 2020, stocks, equities, gold prices, they all fell significantly, and then quickly kind of recovered and then fell again, and vice versa. And that's been the case for about 3.5 years now, a little over 3.5. And with that, there's been a lot of adjusting that's needed to be done by the Fed to make sure the inflation doesn't get out of hand, and even stagflation doesn't get out of hand. Both are potential worries when the markets are extra irrational. And obviously, crypto always has a bit of tinge of irrationality to it. Not, I guess I should say they fluctuate in ways that are independent from other sectors. But when the sectors like the S&P 500 are fluctuating very irrationally, it can have a profound impact on crypto to make it even more unpredictable and more strange. And whether we like it or not, there's still a pretty heavy correlation between crypto and the S&P 500, and we can explore that really quite quick. In fact, I want to look at the visual representation of just how much these two sectors have kind of linked together. Barash, if you wouldn't mind, could you message Maxim and let him know we're live now? That would be very much appreciated. In terms of the S&P 500, oh, you are here. Oh, okay, very good. Welcome, my friend. Gotcha. I saw some message about 30 minutes from now, and I know we're starting at a weird time, but yeah, it's good to have you here, Max. I wanted to show everyone the correlation that we're seeing between crypto and the S&P and even gold. And it's pretty staggering here. If you look at where we were at back on October 29th, approximately 4 weeks ago, the S&P was at 41.17. It's now sitting at 45.60 as of the beginning of today. Gold, if you go back to the beginning of October, its price was at 1836. It's now up to 2064. And then Bitcoin, of course, if we go back about 6 weeks, the price was at 26.8K and it's now at 38.4K, which I believe earlier today it hit 38.8K, which was its highest price in a year and a half. So long story short, everything has been surging, and lots of new money has come into all three sectors, which is great on the surface, but the downsides is it strengthens the argument that the Fed may have today of increasing interest rates, which, as we know, for the last couple of years, has been a bit of a thorn in the side of crypto and its ability to continue its market cap growth. Um, I'm curious what your take on this is, Maxim, if you have one. But at the very least, maybe we can have an open discussion about it. Of course, yeah. Most specifically, what do you think an interest rate rise would do here in late 2023? Do you think it could still have the same impact that it had when it was happening in 2022? Hmm. Yeah, yeah. The benefit of us starting right now is we could have a very exciting announcement while we're live still. So we'll definitely keep an eye. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll watch for sure. We'll watch and see if the news breaks. I'd argue this is probably the biggest announcement we've had of the year because of the fact that the S&P has just had its biggest month in 70 years, which is just staggering to see that headline. So I think, uh-huh. Uh-oh. That would be interesting. You're definitely fine on Skype on my end. I wonder if they may just mean you're quiet. It may just mean that your volume is a bit low. Because if you're on Skype, anything you can do to bolster your mic volume there, Maxim? I wonder if I can lower mine. Could try that. Do I sound any lower or higher now, Max? Or uh-oh. Let's see if we can figure that out really quick. Sorry for the delay, folks. We're just gonna figure out Maxim's microphone here really quick because he just had a nice. All right, while he does so, I will continue on and talk about a few of the other highlights from the week and what we're going to be looking for. So, going back to our. Yep, I hear you. What do you think, Balresh?
Okay, Evgeny, can you hear me now? I think you can. I was not, I was muted on purpose, basically. We have issues getting Maxim's voice. One more second.
Anyway, you know what we can do, Max? If you find there is, yeah, okay.
Maxim, if you can, let us know in the chat. That's
yes.
our confirmation.
We think we found the reason, and yeah, here we go. Okay, good. So just to shortly repeat. Oh, it was my long speech. I will have to do it short now. Brian, can you show the chart once again?
Of course.
So this chart shows you that there's been movement in a specific direction, namely up. Some started early, some started late, for approximately, yeah, at least 2 months. And now it is the time to find the reason, rationalization, and projection to the future why it should continue. This is how usually crowd gets caught on the move. And one potential rationalization could be now Powell comes out and says, okay, folks, that's it. No more tightening. Maybe we will even reduce rates in the future. Okay, so it could be. which will happen in 15 minutes. There could be some other reasons too, but if you look into the price of all assets, stocks, gold, commodities, and crypto going up, definitely market has been betting on end of tightening cycle for quite some time. So now it is a time to get a confirmation and ideally spread around through all meters. People say, oh yeah, so actually we're doing well. Economy is not struggling, and the worries about soft landing or recession were wrong. And this is exactly where a recession kicks in and prices start declining. But we will observe it. And we'll see for the next 15 minutes whatever is announcement it. As a price range in crypto, especially Bitcoin and Ethereum, was getting more and more tight, breakout is expected. And from timing perspective, it fits nicely. It could happen right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think beginning in 15 minutes, we'll start to hear some definitive news on what they're planning to do. It usually kind of drags throughout the next 30 to 60 minutes once that time comes. So it's not all at once. It's kind of a gradual announcement, and then the markets start to react and prices get volatile. So we'll see how it goes in the second half of this call. In the meantime, you know, looking at the past week of performers, we see strikingly Bitcoin is being talked about less this past week compared to the week before. While you see all sorts of altcoins here getting big social volume spikes, indicating that there is more interest in them. Obviously, we see BUSD here, a big jump. Not as much talk about BNB, surprisingly. I actually thought there would be more interest in this, especially with it being, I believe, the fourth largest market cap asset right now. Obviously, its price has continued to drop on the news of CZ stepping down, or kind of being forcibly stepped down from his role as CEO at Binance. And we just have all sorts of social volume spikes based on mostly price performers or top price performers in the top 100 here. We can see some of the big gainers. We had Rune up plus 17%, Injective 17%. Celestia was the biggest gainer among these notable assets at plus 27%. Stacks up 10%. Dogecoin up 7%. Solana a mild 4%. And Bitcoin, one of the performers that actually was in the positive at just a modest plus 1.4%. But like we said, this was enough to create a new year-and-a-half high, getting up to as high as 38.8K earlier today. So there are a lot of reasons to believe that 40K is right in front of us now, even with some concerns. And we'll talk about those concerns here now, beginning with whales and exactly what they're doing with their money at the moment. These are the three key lines that I like to take a look at to get a grasp of just how likely continued rises are to happen. Beginning with this line, which represents the collective holdings of wallets holding between 10 to 10,000 BTC. This is kind of that key range of sharks all the way up to very high-end whales, without really crossing into the 10,000 plus category, which is typically exchange addresses. And yes, absolutely, a lot of these addresses within this range are exchange addresses, but we need to start somewhere. And based on backtesting and previous studies, this line does have an impact on where prices go next. So it's really kind of the best that we tend to use. And what we see now, pretty much since October 18th, we're going back about 6 weeks, this line was holding about 66.92%, a little over 2/3 of the supply. And now they're down just a modest 0.17% of the supply ever since. They got very low. They were taking a lot of profits right here around November 10th, 11th. And then they actually started to accumulate a bit, got as high as 66.84%, and are now back down to 66.75 again. So a little concerning that we continue to see a price divergence that looks like this versus Bitcoin whale holding divergence that looks something like that, right? That's a what I would refer to as a bearish divergence. I mean, even if we go all the way back to its high in the past 6 months, it's still moving down while prices are going up during that same time frame. And without getting too many more lines and turning this into a mess of a chart, I'll just say that it's a concern when prices continue to rise while the supply held is gradually falling. Even if it isn't a big fall, it is a fall. Now that's supported, that theory of whales and sharks not quite keeping up with price is supported by USD coin here in blue and Tether here in red, which also have been moving down pretty significantly for the last 4 to 5 months or so. You see USD coin, if we look at the holders that have between $100,000 to $10 million, that's kind of the equivalent of that sweet spot of real active holders and their wallet holdings for stable coins. They were up at about 39.94% back on August 5th, just about 4 months ago. And now they hold 36.92. So they have a little less than, or a little more than 3% dropped of USD coin over the past 4 months. And Tether is kind of right there with it, going from 37.91% now down to 36.34%. So all three of the key coins that typically indicate how confident sharks and whales are have all declined for the midterm here. I am happy to see that Bitcoin's holdings are up a little bit for sharks and whales over the last few weeks, but it doesn't really break the long-term trend, which is still a decline. Now, that said, you know, we've managed to continue seeing a rise here since mid-October, despite this trend going down for all three. Less and less shark and whale holdings during that time. So there's no reason to believe that we can't keep inching forward a little more, maybe to 40K. I would be surprised if it goes a little bit beyond that, unless we start to see these three lines start to turn around and go positive. Remember that these kinds of indicators, they're all based on probability. Anomalies happen, so there's no guarantee that prices are on the verge of retracing. And sometimes, you know, we hit a psychological support or resistance level, like crossing 40K, and then the sharks and whales act irrational themselves and say, you know what, I'm going to start FOMOing in and try to push the price up to 50K. So sometimes you can't predict where prices will go until you get to that next level, right? And then you see how sharks and whales react to that. That's why, you know, when you try to predict a price based on timing and you say, you know, when will Bitcoin hit 50K again? Our answer isn't, you know, probably 6 months from now based on, you know, an event happening or something, because events are already known now and prices get baked in. It isn't like they just sort of hover and do nothing and then all of a sudden in April they take off because a halving happens. It's something that people are aware of now and start to react to and anticipate for by making buys or making sells accordingly. So based on probability, we're still in a bit of a concerning range that indicates it's a little more bearish than usual. And I would just factor that in. Maxim, would you like to add anything to kind of the whale and shark behavior before we move on to more charts?
No, pretty much agree. The only thing, it's not yet super significant. If you look on smaller holdings, we usually, or I usually look 10 to 100,000. The behavior there, not so obvious, but yeah, there are some signs of concern. Yeah,
are you talking about for Tether? 10,000?
Tether and USDC. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if we open that up really quick, when we look at the smaller traders, yeah, they're moving down too for Tether.
Yeah, they've been kind of accumulating. That was a good sign. But lately looks like they saw it as an opportunity. I need to buy now. So yeah, it's slightly concerning. I agree.
Yeah.
But this behavior, you know, you see, it's going strong up and going strong down. It corresponds to uncertainty or extreme level of uncertainty we've been watching the last weeks. It's literally like one of this time I cannot give a bet, like up or down. It's just getting tighter, and it can go in any way. It can go up and then down, or can just go down and then for some time and then up. As a matter of fact, last week when you were not here, I say, well, okay, whatever, 2,400 to 2,600 Ethereum I sell, 1,750 I buy. This is only if you're about trading, and I do hope we go to 2.4. But the sign says here, yeah, we can. There is some temptation, realized temptation in the market to buy this levels as we can go higher.
Right.
But it's not critical yet. It's not critical yet.
Absolutely. And we'll see what this Powell news does. I mean, now we're 4 minutes away from the top of the hour. So
Yes,
we could see
very
some shakeouts very soon.
Very soon.
But while we wait, let's talk a little more about how Bitcoin specifically looks and you know exactly how that might factor into the rest of the markets here. We do see a consistent trend of transaction volume climbing higher and higher. We see that especially transaction volume in terms of USD, it's really climbed significantly. You know, we're up at about if we look at it on a daily, it already is on a daily scale, but if we look on like a 30-day trend, look at how the trend is back up to its highest level since July now, with an average of about 10.48 billion in US dollars per day in Bitcoin on-chain transaction volume. That's pretty massive, and it's come a long way since the more stagnant times back in August and September here. So it's good to see that utility is picking up. We can see that that's kind of confirmed too in daily active addresses where it really got high. This was about a 3-month spike here on November 24th. And that kind of helps to justify price rises when you see that activity is continuing to rise. These are unique active addresses, not just wash trading. It's excluding things like that and only counting each address one time to see the total amount of unique addresses interacting on a daily basis, and that's been looking a bit better. Circulation is actually what's been really impressing me. It has improved. I know there's a lot of noise here. If I were to change to 7 days, you can see a clearer picture. Look at how this trend was very prevalent here over the last 2.5 months or so, about 3 months since early September. You know, having about 63K unique tokens. No, I take that back. About 100. No, we'll just say 63K in the week of September 8th. And then the week of November 15th, it went all the way up to 136, 137K. That's a big difference. And this model, which I loaded before the call, indicates that the amount of circulation compared to the market cap level that we're seeing for Bitcoin is finally showing a neutral signal after being more in the bearish range for this long stretch between August 2022 and September 2023. And it's looking better for the first time in a long time. And I do trust this model a lot in terms of a long-term perspective for just how healthy Bitcoin's market cap is right now compared to the actual amount of coins being moved on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So as far as utility goes, we still have some encouraging signs. Just understand that that isn't the end-all be-all to look at. Now, what also contributes is just how profitable traders are at any given time. And when we say traders, we're talking about the entire base of people that hold or are trading Bitcoin at any given time. What MVRV here does is it looks at the various time frames of holders and says, all right, over a 30-day span, assuming the address has been active at least once, what is the average return in which they're up or down? And right now it's pointing to the MVRV being just above even at about 2.86%. If it was at 0%, that would essentially be the most average you can get in terms of performances over this time. Anything above plus 15%, kind of like what we saw back in late October, that would be a bit of a danger zone, indicating that average traders are up a bit too much compared to what's normally expected. And if they were at like minus 15% or something down here, that would indicate that they are there's kind of an opportunity zone forming due to so many traders losing money. And that's kind of, when you hear about buying low and selling high, it's not always easy to find those lows and highs in crypto. But MVRV is a way to kind of cut through and getting an objective perspective of what is a low versus a high based on how other traders are performing on a kind of a 0% scale, where anything above 0 is scary, anything below 0 is something you're kind of waiting for if you're trying to find a time to buy more Bitcoin or open a new position in Bitcoin. So we were in kind of this scary moment here in late October, but there was quite an anomaly because prices kept climbing, even though the 30-day said that we were getting overheated. And here we are, we just hit a year-and-a-half high, 38.8K. And MVRV has actually gone down, which is quite rare. I still think there's a bit of risk, especially if we look at the long term, because active 365-day traders are at plus 32.2% on average, which is extremely high. It's not at the point where it's, we're about to fall off a cliff or anything, but it does indicate that based on probabilities, we are more likely to see a bit of a retrace to push both the 30 and 365-day MVRVs back down closer to 0. Looking at funding rates, I don't see anything too concerning. We talked a couple weeks ago about how there were some longs opening up, and you can see how they really kind of longed right at that local top, and then they dropped a little bit once we saw a very minor fade back to 35K. And ever since, it looks like people are a little more pensive when it comes to opening up, these leveraged longs and potentially try to capitalize on the continued price rises. So that's a good thing. Ideally, we'd like to actually see some shorts coming in, because that would mean there's some serious doubt in prices, making it to 40K and continuing to climb. So based on everything we're seeing on the funding rate side, nothing too concerning here whatsoever. It could be better though, just keep that in mind. Whale transactions. Another interesting sign is the fact that $1 million or more whales continue to rise. We're seeing, as of yesterday, a little over 2,000 transactions that were valued at $1 million or more. Typically, if we look at the last 30 days, we've kind of been in this range where it's around 1,500 or so, but it is looking like there's still a healthy amount of whale activity going on, which is good because we have very high capital wallets that are moving around coins right now. I'll come back to the tier. Actually, we already kind of touched on the tiers and the 10 to 10,000 range, where they're kind of moving up or were moving up, but took some serious profit, especially when we saw this big jump here. The ratio of transaction volume and profit to loss is relatively normal right now, nothing too crazy there. But this is what I find particularly fascinating, and I'd love to have Maxim's perspective on this as well. The mean dollar invested age, which is essentially the age on average in which the coins or investments have been sitting in their same wallets without being moved. Typically, you'll see a lot of upward movement unless there's like a big bull market. You'll see sideways movement if it's kind of indecisive, and there might be some hints at some very big wallets moving their coins, and you'll see downward movement if we're starting to see a serious validation of a bull market. And as we can see, we're kind of getting teased here I guess for about 6 weeks or so now, it's been kind of on this sideways range where it's hinting at potentially moving down, but it hasn't happened yet. I know you've been watching this line a little bit too, Maxim. Do you have any thoughts about the mean dollar invested age line?
Let's move the slider with the time frame back to, let's say, 22. How did it look at that time?
So the last year here?
Yeah,
Or
just take
further?
just take a slider down, right?
Okay. You want me to go back?
Okay, the same time frame, but just move it parallel to all the time.
To all the time. You're talking about the all-time mean dollar invested range?
No. Older, like back in time.
Okay, I'll go back to 2 years, so we can look at it that way.
Okay, not okay. I mean, just move the slider to the left so that we can see the same time frame. But, okay, the whole. Okay, not exactly, but.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like that?
It doesn't matter actually. Yeah. What you see, it's there is a chance, and what you want to show, there is a time when it slows down. That was in when? Let me see on the screen. In July 2020. Yeah, this is what people speculate now. It slows down, or goes slightly down or up, or doesn't increase much anymore. It's a redistribution, and then it catapults. Yeah, why not? It's possible. Yeah,
right.
But taking into account the general sentiment, where expectations of Bitcoin hitting 100,000 above, emerges of Plan B, again, I have my concerns here. So the general setup, you're saying correct. But the usage of this metric, mean dollar stage, which I do look into, the best, in my opinion, when it starts falling rapidly, which you see on the screen now, somewhere in, when was it, November 20? When it starts falling rapidly, it means it's a very active redistribution. Yeah, yes, exactly this. This is the best time. So price is growing and you probably tempted to sell, you just keep it. Yeah, you just keep it because the price usually need 2, 3, 4, 5 months after you see this rapid redistribution to settle down. So this is how I use main usage. But to see that it's now flattening, good. It means we need to keep eye on it. If, for instance, now we see increase of the price, and it start dropping down rapidly, okay, it's one sign. But if it increases the price and it just flat, it's another sign. We'll see. But it's a long-term indicator.
Exactly.
One of the longest term indicators.
Right.
I don't know how it can be used on shorter time frame, not even on weekly trades. But it's good to keep this whole picture in eye. Yeah.
For sure. There's a lot of noise when it comes to daily fluctuations with the mean dollar invested age line. But in short, if you're seeing prices rise and the mean dollar invested age is flattening out or especially moving down, that's a sign that a lot of redistribution is happening, which usually signals that prices are more likely to continue to rise. So flattening out is very good. It's, as you can see in the past, it's kind of a predecessor often to an eventual big drop in mean dollar invested age that coincides with a big price rise. So as Maxim said, it's risky to take profits if you're seeing that redistribution is at least starting to happen. And that's kind of where we're at now. It doesn't mean we can't just proceed, right? We've seen teases before where it looks like we might be seeing a drop in mean dollar invested age, and then all of a sudden it just stops and it continues to rise. So this has been kind of a long tease. It certainly could lead to more, but we've seen it happen before where, it doesn't quite start that drop that we're hoping for. And I recommend, if you've got your Sandbase Pro membership, just check in on this line on a daily basis. And there may just be one day where all of a sudden you see, the mean dollar invested age line drop 20 days or something all of a sudden in one day, which would be a sign that we may just be in blast off mode. So I love this chart. I still think it's best to use on a long-term basis though. So don't pay too much attention to one day unless you start seeing one of these, right? A really big fall. As far as realized profit loss goes, we can see that it's kind of slowed down now, and most realized profits have kind of fallen back to even. I'll zoom in so we can see it a little more granularly. Yeah, we actually saw, interestingly, a big realized loss just yesterday, and this was the biggest loss spike since August. Yeah, about 3 months ago. So that said, that could increase the likelihood of a little more of a rise. Usually when we see these loss spikes, it lends to some capitulation happening that can lead to price rises. Supply and exchanges also looking great. We're down below 5.4% now of Bitcoin sitting on exchanges. I've talked about it before, but it's always a bit of a double-edged sword because you will see less Bitcoin on exchanges that are available to sell. But if it gets too low, which we've not really seen before in history, but there could come a point where there's not enough Bitcoin to even circulate around, and that can dry up things like that NVT chart that I showed here. There has to at least be enough Bitcoin on exchanges where it's still being actively traded, and I don't think that's a serious worry right now. But I'm kind of looking ahead to the future, and when Bitcoin's supply and exchanges drops below 5%, which it looks like it's on a trajectory to do, there could come a point where there's actually just relatively low volume on exchanges because everybody is keeping their coins in self-custody. So I find that interesting, but overall, I think the continued tick down in terms of supply and exchanges is good news. Social dominance looking fairly average. I'm not too concerned. It is nice to see that it's moved up a little bit over the last couple of weeks. But there's kind of a healthy split between Bitcoin discussions and altcoin discussions. Now, weighted sentiment here is something worth looking at. As you can see throughout this journey, once it already pumped up above 33K or so back in late October, there's been mostly negative sentiment. A couple weeks where it got a little bit positive, but you can see it's kind of repeating what it did here in late October and early November, now that we just got to late November, early December. And we're in fairly negative range at the moment, where it does seem as though people are doubting a continued price rise and doubting that Bitcoin can hit 40K. For those who followed our videos and content before, that raises the likelihood of 40K actually happening. Markets typically move the opposite direction of the crowd's expectation. And right now, according to our weighted sentiment metric, there's a lot of negativity that lends to the crowd belief that prices are going to drop, meaning prices therefore have an increased likelihood of rising a bit longer until the crowd gets greedy and starts showing FOMO once again. So that is great news if you are bullish and really rooting for 40K. Now we talked about, the whales being a little bit concerning still. We talked about funding rate being fine, utility looking up. Overall, it's kind of a mixed bag, but I hate to say it, we're kind of in an unpredictable time where we're not really guaranteed to go either direction. And I think maybe a lot of it has to do with the Powell talk today. So as the news starts to unfold, which I'm still not seeing anything definitive, that's when we'll really start to see some serious movement here. We'll focus a little on altcoins and just the general market now, and I want to start by looking at the MVRV midterm opportunity and danger zone divergence. We're looking at the combined average trading returns of 30-day, 90-day, and 180-day trading returns. And it's doing a refresh now, but you kind of got the moral of the story as I was talking. It's mostly looking like there are semi-overbought and overbought signals at the moment, which makes sense. Altcoins have been on quite a run for the last 6 weeks or so, even with a lot of them kind of slowing down over the last 2 weeks. The altcoin averages are still quite high for, especially the 30 and 90-day returns. And for that reason, there are a lot of orange and red signals that are popping up. I know they're green at the moment, but that's just because the whole model is refreshing, and they're going to turn orange because they're negative here. In short, average trading returns look a little bit more concerning for altcoins than they do for Bitcoin, which has been growing at a much more stable rate relative to, some of these assets that have 2x, 3x, or even 5x over the last 2 months or so. So that's a little bit concerning and something you need to keep in mind. I want to talk a little bit about social trends very quickly. I have this pulled up. This is the Powell or FOMC social volume chart, which shows that there hasn't been a lot of talk yet. I want to zoom in, maybe even just to the last month. You're starting to see a little bit of a spike because Powell's talking right now. I expect you're going to see something more like this, or maybe even this by the end of the day. And you can see just how drastic the price movements tend to be right after these talks. A little bit of a drop here in September, a big rise right after here in October, a big local top here in early November, and another big local top about a week later, anytime the FOMC and Powell are being talked about. Now, I did just see a message in my Discord channel. It looks like Powell's saying we're not done, more restriction needed, and inflation is too high. So that sounds like what the most likely outcome was going to be. They're still hawkish, meaning they're trying to bring inflation down. It likely is going to lead to a little bit of fear that could lead to a minor dip, but considering this was already kind of the expected outcome after this biggest month of S&P returns in 70 years, I guess on the surface, Maxim, I think this is kind of just expected and shouldn't shake the markets too much. If he said something really, really scary, then we might have something more concerning to think about. But obviously the speech isn't done yet, and he could still, strike some more fear in. What do you have? Do you have any interpretations of what he's saying?
According to what just guys shared is
with Powell's speech.
Yeah, we're not finished yet. We will do
Right.
A restriction as it needed. But does it look like market believes him? We'll see.
Yeah, so far not much movement. I guess, 18 minutes ago, Powell says it's too soon to discuss rate cuts. So that's not such a bad thing. It means that maybe they don't want to make any commitments yet, and the next rate cut won't happen until 2024. But a rate rise, I guess, based on that news, isn't really likely either. So this headline alone points to the very likely outcome that nothing is going to happen, which I think is overall a net good thing for crypto not getting too impacted by the US economy right now. All right, so we're about a little over 45 minutes into the call now. I think it would be great to go over some altcoin requests and talk a little bit about whatever questions you guys have. So Balrush, feel free to bring up a few if you see some, whether it's questions or asset requests, anything else.
Okay, we already had 2 asset requests in the beginning. That's NAKA and FTM. The first one is NAKA.
Okay. I don't think this is an asset I've looked up before. Nakamoto Games. It is the 250th ranked asset, and it was much, much lower a few weeks ago because I can see that prices have really, really taken off over the last couple of months. If we go back, let's just look at October 1st until now. Its price has risen 171% during that time. And today, appears to be the highest volume, I would guess, that the asset has ever seen. If we go back, I don't know how long this asset has existed. Oh, quite a while, actually. Yeah, okay. It's interesting. Prices have been way higher than where it is now, which is not abnormal for altcoins. It looks like it got all the way up to an all-time high of $6 about 2 years ago when there were a lot of all-time highs going on. And now it's at $1. Well, I'll zoom in so I don't get an inaccurate number. Yeah, 197 or so. But I did see that the trading volume spike even exceeded what we were seeing back 2 years ago. So lots of interest apparently from traders going on today, which is a bit of a concerning sign, believe it or not. If this was more of a gradual rise, it would just be a sign of more and more interest, which is good. But when you see sudden spikes like this, that's a bit of a sign that we are in a FOMO stage and we may be close to a top. We'll have to look at a few other metrics though to confirm that. On the daily active address side, we did see some sudden growth here in early November, and it's mostly just kind of stayed in that range ever since. Whale transactions, nothing too special. We haven't really seen $1 million plus transaction since November 23rd. But let's look at the supply distribution breakdown now. So sharks and whales will basically start right about there. And then whales will be in the million to 10 million range. Let's see. Very interesting. I hope these are accurate. I'm seeing like negative percentages, which obviously is not a possibility.
Yeah, could be. If I don't use often, could be some data bug.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's what's going on here. Yeah, it's
but
showing
usually if the numbers are even negative, still the trend will be correct.
Right. So if we look at a really wide range of 10,000 to 100 million NAKA addresses, they are moving down, but this is probably more redistribution. So maybe we can knock off the 10 to 100 million and just look at 10K all the way up to 10 million. That would be kind of the sweet spot. And it looks like it's kind of staying flat. So not much news we can gather from that. We do see that the amount of new addresses coming in are rising over time. Yeah, especially the really small ones here, all moving up fast. Look at that 0.1 to 1 address line really surging high. All of these are going high. So these are all kind of the smaller addresses. Now we're getting into the mid-range. Let's just isolate them. So this is 1,000 to 10,000. That's pretty much dollars because NAKA is valued at just under 2. So wallets with $2,000 to $20,000 rising fast, and now we see a bit of flattening out. So $20,000 to $200,000, they're at around the same level they've been at for the last month or so. $100,000 or $200,000 to $2 million, inching a little high. Oh, well, there's only a few of these. So we have 2 in existence right now. This is a very small asset. And then there's 2 wallets that are valued at $2 million to $20 million. So I guess I would say at the very least, whales and sharks aren't going anywhere. They're showing to be flat here, and the amount of them are staying where they've been at for the last 5 or 6 weeks right here. So I don't see any red flags for NAKA other than the fact that trading volume is very high. On the social side of things, I don't see anything too concerning yet. There's not a big social dominance spike, even though there's a big trading volume spike. Not a lot of talk about it, which is good, because typically when you see, spikes like this or even this, there tends to be a local top that happens right afterwards, and it's good alpha, but not anything huge. This is a little bit of a rise compared to its usual resting state, but not a massive FOMO spike that would get us really worried. On top of that, the weighted sentiment actually appears to be negative, indicating that there's some doubt that this NAKA rise can continue. And that lends to the possibility or higher probability of prices continuing to jump and perhaps go to $2 and beyond. So yeah, overall, I like the look of NAKA here. I appreciate the member who recommended we check this one out. And I think that there isn't anything holding it back from continuing to climb. Just keep in mind that MVRV, which we didn't look at because it wasn't showing on the charts, but I bet we could if we get rid of intraday. So if we look at MVRV really quick, maybe not. Nope, we don't have MVRV data on it, but I could guarantee you that the trading returns are quite high, and there may at least need to be a cool down period because trading returns, especially over the last 30 days, are going to be just through the roof and definitely in a danger zone. So just keep that in mind, even though we don't have that metric showing visibly. All right, what was that second asset recommendation, Balresh?
FTM was the second, Phantom.
Phantom, yeah, we haven't talked about Phantom in a while. So
actually, the best analysis for Phantom would be, what is the current sentiment from community in and outside of Phantom, as it's is Andrei Cronier and everything, promises and expectations which are not yet fulfilled. Doing sentiment analysis here would be nice, but I don't remember seeing mentions of it. And the one person who asked probably knows something. So you can type in the chat, in our YouTube chat, what do you know, what people talk about Phantom? I'm really interested.
Yeah, Phantom appears...
You can analyze here what we have here.
Mm-hmm. It looks like it's just slightly positive. There aren't any extremes going on. Look at how the last big signal was back in mid-October here. Huge negative spike. I don't know if this was related to, you know, the developers and lack of support, something like that. But either way, this kind of marked a bottom, because right afterwards, look at that, really right at the end of the week on October 18th, prices absolutely took off, and they've been up 79% since that day. Since that time, it's kind of been mildly positive, but nothing huge. I don't think this is a major concern whatsoever. So from a sentiment perspective, not a lot of discussion. Social volume and dominance are fairly dormant right now, despite prices getting close to 2x in the past 6 weeks. So yeah, that would answer that question, Maxim. It doesn't look like sentiment is in an extreme position either way. Trading volume, it has dropped down. Surprisingly, yeah, I mean, we had a peak trading volume. We just talked about this, about NAKA and how it was seeing that huge trading volume spike. And that's what I was referring to. If it's a sudden big spike, that's often an indication of FOMO. Even if it doesn't always show up in the sentiment, you can see it in trading volume sometimes, even if people aren't talking about it. And if everyone is suddenly trading into an asset that's been on a big surge, it can mark a local top. And that's what happened to Phantom now. And probability-wise, I think there, from a short-term perspective, could be something similar happening to NAKA as of literally today. And then you look at transaction volume, it's really dropped back down, and trading volume is mostly dormant once again. So I don't see any red flags or reasons why Phantom can't continue to rise. Circulation and active addresses, pretty dormant at the moment. Let me go back to 1 day for circulation. Yeah, nothing special going on there. And we do have MVRV data for Phantom, which is great. And it's showing the 30-day is about even. They're up a very modest plus 2.6%. The 365-day MVRV is at negative 21%, which is interesting. So on average, addresses that have been active in the past year are still quite underwater, not quite to the level they were when the true bottom happened back on October 18th, where they were down a little over 55%, but they're still down 21%, indicating there is a higher probability of a continued rise compared to a fall. And as long as this 365 days is below zero, that's a vote of confidence for you bulls out there who want to hold on to your phantom or even open a position. Do understand it's best though if you see both the short term and the long term in a negative range like we saw back here in mid-October. Nothing crazy on the funding rate. According to Binance funding rate data, it's been pretty dormant for quite some time, other than this little spike here. If I open that up, look at how that coincided with the local top quite well. That's not abnormal. Whale transactions, nothing special there. Looking at the tiers really quick, let's see if there's anything going on. As far as price goes, it's at about 31 cents. So let's start by looking at the million to 10 million wallets, 10 million to 100 million, and 100 million to a billion. There's very few of them. Yeah, so I guess on these three, not much to really say. I think it might be better if we look at the percentage held. So going to 1 million here. Wow, that's actually a huge rise for 1 million to 10 million. Let's merge them together. Okay, so according to this, they hold a very high, okay, we're going to take off the top level though, because this is too much. We're looking at about 89% of the supply held by these three tiers, and that's going to come down. Let's go down one level for all of them, and we'll merge 100K to 1 million, 1 million to 10 million, and 10 million to 100 million. That's better. Okay, so according to this, the active sharks and whales are actually up. They're holding a lot more ever since about 3 weeks ago. They made this huge jump going from 23.5% held to 28.5% held. If we go back in time a little bit, let's just look at the last 3 years for Phantom. So they did have a huge jump or a huge drop about a year ago, and this might be related to the developer leaving the asset. I believe the timing lines up, Maxim. So there was a drop here, and if we combine that with price, let's see just how correlated Phantom's key tiers are with the price. So if we look at, we'll put them in bars.
You placed a price in Bitcoin, yeah? Just so that you know.
Yeah, intentionally.
Okay.
Intentionally, yeah, because we don't want to see how the price is impacted just from the overall market fluctuations. I like to really look at how Phantom fluctuates independently compared to Bitcoin, and I'm doing this more and more. But
this big group obviously killed the trend, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and there was some alpha too. You could see them dumping at the very end of 2022, and it wasn't until February 1st where it really started to decline fast. And then we saw this jump here. Now, putting it into perspective, it isn't a big jump because we see just how much it dropped, but at least they're moving in the right direction, right? We still have lots of millionaires holding on to Phantom, even as its price versus Bitcoin is nothing very special right now. So from a whale and shark perspective, it doesn't look terrible, but there's still a lot of vacated addresses here that left about a year ago that have not returned. So I guess the jury's out in terms of the whales, but in terms of sentiment, as we discussed, nothing too scary there. If we zoom in and look at realized profits, nothing really special, and supply and exchanges is staying low. It's come back down. It was at a peak about 3 weeks ago at 32.3%. Now it's down to 31.3%. So about a full 1% of the Phantom supply has moved to self-custody over the past 3 weeks. and it's not really being talked about, or any sort of crazy FOMO is happening for Phantom. So I don't think it looks too bad. I think a key indicator would be this $100,000 or 100,000 Phantom to 100 million Phantom tier, which holds a little over a quarter of the supply. And if we continue to see it start to rise once again and make up for lost time, that would be a good sign that Phantom is going to go on a run. So I hope that answers your question on the health of Phantom. I think it was a great request, and let's try to look at it again, maybe in a month or two. So we're a little past the hour now. We should probably begin to wrap up here. But overall, I think the markets are looking fine, honestly. And even since the Powell speech, where it looks like no action is going to be taken, knock on wood, most likely, that's a pretty good sign that Bitcoin is very realistic to hit 40K in the near future. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we need to pay attention to how the whales react to that, because right now we still see, based on these three lines, more down movement than up movement. And I would like to see if and when 40K hits before the year ends, maybe it even happens today or tomorrow, who knows? How are the whales and sharks going to react? Are we going to see more stablecoin accumulation where people want to suddenly buy? Or is it going to just be more dropping and profit taking from the sharks and whales, while the small addresses are the ones who get a bunch of FOMO and try to buy in? So those are two very different scenarios, and we'll have to see which one plays out. But for now, just in the last half an hour since Powell started talking, it's been mostly good price action, and I like the sign of that. Any final words from you, Brother Maxim?
No, just no investment advice, as always. In summary of our conversation last week, not from the last Friday, but during this last week, we do expect and hope for the for the purpose of beautiful structure that Bitcoin, Ethereum or break a bit higher to 4 in Ethereum typically, or I don't remember exactly level, around 40 in Bitcoin. And then we have a very strong narrative shared, accepted, and not disputed by majority. We have several narratives, and we need to have one or two, whatever it is. For the moment, still dispute, like now, us including, we show some expectations for decline, and it sounds reasonable. So there should be time when whatever we say, you don't like it, people don't like it, or it even appears to be difficult to announce anything bearish. No, this should come. I hope the sooner it comes, there is a clarity, and this is a part of the way how price development looks. It leads to it. There is this convergent prices aging higher. Usually it's thrust up, and then some hype, excitement, and reversal down. So this is summary.
Yeah, thank you for that summary. I think it's going to be great to revisit this next week, and it's good to finally have another video with you. I know we were kind of going either me or you on these videos, and it's great to talk together. So hopefully we can do it again next week and give you guys some hopefully good news about potentially 40K. We're literally right there at the doorstep now. So very exciting times, and look out for another video from me coming. I'll be releasing one today. I'm recording with Minted Max in about 20 minutes, one of our collaborators, and we're going to talk more about the markets. So enjoy this video if you're watching it now on replay, and enjoy another video coming out later today.
Yep.
So on behalf of Maxim and Valresh for streaming here, we want to thank you all and wish you all a wonderful, happy, and healthy weekend. We'll talk to you next week, guys.
Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.